So we're going to get the meeting started. Mrs. Hatfield, could you please call the roll?
Yes, please. Mr. King.
Present.
Mrs. Patrick.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Here.
And Dr. Weiss.
Here.
Thank you.
Please stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, even on this beautiful night. Glad you're spending some time with us. Before we get started, we need to approve the agenda, and I don't have any changes or addendums, so I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick.
Yes.
Dr. Weiss.
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel.
Yes, and with that, we will get started with our first presentation. It's on our safety and security update with Joe Swazi. He's our Director of Safety, Security, and Preparedness. Take it away, Joe.
Can you hear me okay?
There you go.
How about now?
There you go, Joe.
You were testing me. It's good to be tested. Well, thanks for allowing me to come in and present my annual update on where we're at for the safety and security. I know the last board meeting you touched on the sunset salute and the commencement. I just wanted to give a thanks to all the behind-the-scenes workers. As you know, in any special event, there's a lot of hands that make it look nice on the end. They were pretty much 12-hour days, and everyone just pitched in and did a remarkable job. I'd like to thank the Delaware County Sheriff's Office, and I have a photo here, I think. They provided their command bus, and all the school resource officers pitched in. You could see they get to join in the celebration with seeing their graduates. And it really was, in addition to the heat and logistically being challenged this year, doing 2 a day, we were running around. But good to see some smiles, and we couldn't have had better weather for that, really. I want to get into where we're at with the safety vestibules. If you recall, we were supposed to do half of the safety vestibules last summer, and with the remaining project completed this summer, but because the levy was delayed, we, as you know, have, I don't know, I think Mr. Gordon said last week, some 81 construction projects going on. I'll give you a brief glimpse of where we're at. That's not where we're at, that's where we started. We got a little bit of a drive through here at Indian Springs, and as you can tell, that's the structure, and obviously the glass and some other things have yet to be laid out. But I do want to bring to the board's attention, I had hoped to have a visitor management system in place along with the vestibules, and I'm telling you right now that I don't know if we'll be able to make that deadline by the beginning of school. So we're having a little bit of vendor delays, some of the computer systems with the chip shortages, and one thing the pandemic I guess revealed to us, in our high schools where we have our second and third late, the kids will take the study halls, so we have, you know, a good amount of students outside. So what I am trying to do is not have the safety vestibule delay their entry into school. A couple of vendors have promised us the capability to be able to get not only our regular visitors checked in, but a system that coincides with our power school, which would really help out our attendance folks. So I'm trying to get both done at the same time here. We might be able to do it, but I just want to bring to your attention that we may or may not have
Joe,
it.
just so we're clear, that on the picture on the left, the visitors now will come in and have to
They come in through the double doors.
buzz in there, and then
They got to
buzz
get
in.
buzzed in, and there'll be an intercom system, and then they have to come into the office before.
So now they're entirely visible, and
Correct.
anything in their possession is entirely visible?
Right, and then we have some cameras set up that shows us where they're at in the system. Does the board have any questions on the safety vestibules? We have them in some of the schools, Berlin being one of the most. And again, what the pandemic showed us, like at the high schools, the principals and assistant principals were quick to get people socially distanced, and they came up with some QR codes on their own where the kids that had phones, and I know most of them have phones, they were able to use these QR codes, and that really assisted the attendance personnel in getting the kids checked in. So we're trying to incorporate that with the current vendor technology, and that's where we're having a little bit of a hiccup. I just want to let you know some of the partner engagement stuff that I'm involved in. The Delaware County Criminal Justice Association, fire chiefs, the Delaware County Public-Private Committee, and I was supposed to spell that out. I'm from an organization that loves acronyms. So the FBI JTTF is the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I'm a member of their executive board. Parent-teacher organizations, parent program teams. Even this morning, Mr. Rafe and I met with Jackie Bain, trying to enhance our safe teen drivers parent task force, and she has some ideas of some things we could try to do once we get back into school full-time. You know, we have that driving simulator at Liberty High School, and it's good to get that around all the high schools, and we have little competitions to see, of course. We have to be competitive. I think Liberty won it last year, so. Preparedness. So one of the things, or the only thing we can control is the preparedness part of my job. So I wanted to point out that we were successful for the third year in a row of obtaining the Attorney General's Office grant. This year we got a little over $109,000 for the district. So we utilized some of that money in our behavioral assessment training, which we just had on June 15th. We call it our assessment and care teams. So for those of you that have been following any of the legislation, House Bill 123 mandates that by 2023 that every school district have these assessment and care or threat assessment teams in the schools. So we've for the last couple of years, we've had not only teams at the middle school and the high school, but also the elementary schools. So we're well ahead of that, and it has nothing to do with, having it done before the state mandate. So we used some of the grant money to bring in a couple of training teams, and we had all the principals come in, and we're basically looking at behaviors of concern. So what we're trying to do is trying to prevent any type of targeted violence in the school by focusing on those behaviors. And early identification, as you know, and intervention is the key there. And we do this in concert with Pupil Services and Alicia's group. We also discuss the outcomes of the Panorama survey we have every year as they relate to safety and security. And we continue our overlapping efforts with as much research-based data as possible. So one of the other areas that I am over are the school resource officers, and I would like to acknowledge them today. Their three main roles are as a guest lecturer in the schools. There are informal counselors and mentors. Sometimes the kids, they don't want to go to the teacher, they don't want to go to the principal. They like to maybe bounce some things off the school resource officer. And of course, they're all a law enforcement officer. So we have a little bit of a change this year. Deputy Martin, who was at Orange High School for 6 or 7 years, he moved over to the Sheriff's Department Community Liaison position, but you'll still see him in some of the other schools as a backfill. So we have Deputy Roy filling in for him. Deputy Weaver, Nee Rice, was recently promoted to detective. So we have Deputy Newman coming over to fill in her slot. And then this year, we were able to, with our 5-year forecast, add an additional school resource officer. So we have one at each of the high schools. Then instead of having 2 to cover the rest of the middle schools and elementary schools, now we have a third in Deputy Aaron Siegel, and he has some previous school resource officer experience in Virginia. So we split up the responsibilities to the school resource officer, so hopefully we'll have a little bit greater coverage. Some of the things they did last year in a COVID year, because they were in the schools, I went ahead of myself. Of course, they're in all the health classes in the high school, talking about drug and alcohol awareness. They do a presentation on home safety, bullying, peer pressure, stranger safety, what to do when you call 911, summer safety, water safety, Halloween safety, bicycle safety, and some of the classes I helped do presentations with them on were the civil law and the government classes, and we also did a presentation on the Bill of Rights. So they were in the schools even when we were shut down. We came up with a plan with the Sheriff's Department to keep them in the school buildings. This way, if someone in the patrol division happened to become sick, they were like a ready reserve. And then, of course, they were there handling telephone complaints. We're good. I got 1 minute. That was my key. And then this is something we introduced last year, and I wanted to point out to you, the only thing we are changing is item number 2. It used to say lock out, and that was getting confusing with lockdown, so the verbiage is changed to secure, and that'll go into all the summer packets to the parents. And we follow this national program from the I Love You guys, and this is our standard response protocol. So these will be on the website, and I just wanted to bring to your attention that we changed that one verbiage. And since I heard my buzzer, I think that's it, and I will open it up to the board for any questions you may have of me. Yes, sir. Mr. O'Brien.
Joe, I mean, you showed that last slide. Is that still consistent with the Alice training?
Yes, sir. This is more of a communication piece. So for the Alice part, for an active aggressor situation, we would still be in the middle one, which is called the lockdown. That's where we train the students. And I'm glad you brought that up, because in the first Polaris mall shooting this year, we had some students that were there, and they knew what to do, and there were some adults that were like frozen. So it's great training, and I really think our kids take it to heart, and we tell them, you know, whatever you can do to get out of the situation, get out of it, but if you can't, then you lock down, and then there's the acronym for ALICE, to alert, lockdown, counter, evade. But that is in addition to, this is just a communication piece of it. Good question. Yes, Ms. Fields?
And the governor this week announced a $10 million, I guess, grant for schools to install more safety measures, and I didn't know if we would qualify, because we never qualify for any money, but...
We are looking into that, but
okay.
Yes, we are aware of that, and there's a short deadline to that, and of course, if we do qualify, we will definitely seek whatever type of money we can get, either at the state level, at the federal. There's some COPS grants from Department of Justice or stuff that are really difficult to qualify, and just like in the past, it's pretty hard for this school district to qualify, because it's usually a needs-based thing. Not that we don't need it, but
Right.
however they determine need.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, very good.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
Thank you guys very much.
Great job.
Yep. Next, we have our strategic planning update on internal processes from Mr. Mark Rafe, our superintendent.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm, again, just going to start us off and then turn it over to a member of our leadership team. I just want to kind of, for the people who were here last time, will be a little bit of a repeat, but our new friends, we'll have, just a reminder, we do have a very detailed strategic plan that clearly outlines our strategic priorities that are our students and stakeholders, our resource stewardship, our internal processes, and learning and organizational development. This plan has helped us over the past 4 years direct the work of our departments and our administrators within the district, and it keeps us focused on those priorities. So anything that we're talking about has to fit into one of those priorities. So tonight we are talking about internal processes. Before I hit on that, I do want to, I talked a lot, our grounding statement in the district is to facilitate maximum learning for every student. Our vision to be the recognized leader for high performance and efficiency in education. That's what we're trying to become. And I didn't really highlight the value statements last time. And those are really the behaviors we expect of everybody in the organization as we do the work to achieve our mission and reach our vision. And those value statements are: we respect and we care, we make sound decisions, we can always get better, and we partner at school and in the community. So the internal processes strategic priority has 3 strategic objectives: implement a digital conversion, expand our talent management strategy, and strive for a culture of operational excellence. So I'm going to invite Mr. Meyer to the podium to talk about those areas.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rafe. Good evening. As Mr. Rafe said, we're going to look at the strategic priority internal processes, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of internal processes across the school organization, and especially an organization our size. So when we look at those strategic objectives and the focus of those strategic objectives that we're focusing on, that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So the first one, strive for a culture of operational excellence, and I think that word culture is really important in striving for a culture of operational excellence, because it really starts with selecting the best person for the job bringing into the organization. And when we bring those people into the organization, like Mr. Rafe just stated, being able to articulate what our vision and what our mission is here in Olentangy, from the onboarding to the orientation to the induction, and then obviously through the employee experience as our employees work through their years in Olentangy. Also, and this is important within the culture too, because we stress this with a lot of our work groups. So one thing that Mr. Rafe does really well is he meets with our employee groups across the district yearly, as well as not just our employee groups, but also our association leadership, and then each building. And it's really important that each employee in the organization is part of that mission and vision. So from bus drivers to custodians to food service workers to teachers to counselors to administrators, everybody is equally important in facilitating maximum learning for every student. And I talked about the ongoing relationships and how important that is, because what that does is create trust in the organization when we make decisions and when we collaborate and we receive feedback from our employee groups in the decision making. So that really all goes into the culture. The next thing, performance management. On the operations side, just like the academic side, we've created key performance indicators, our metrics, and we look at how well we're doing, how efficient we're being, what feedback we're collecting, where are the gaps, and where we can improve our processes. So going into the next thing, item there, processes. So again, we look at all processes across the organization. So for example, the workflow starts to finish. So who's involved in that workflow as far as employees, what needs to be communicated, where might there be some gaps, and then how can we improve those processes. And at the end of the day, it ends with high quality service. We want to provide the best service we can to all of our stakeholders, our students, our staff, and of course the community. So some examples of things that we've been doing, we use the same format that we used at the last board meeting. Again, so establish KPIs. So in the operational team, over the last 4 years, we've established over 70 key performance indicators that we continue to look at. And what we wanted to do was 3 years ago, create these performance indicators across the HR department, across the business department, across the food service department, transportation, to collect trend data over 3 years. And then we want to benchmark that against national industry standards or local standards. So that's where we are right now. And as you can see over there where we're headed, this year we're going to identify a operations scorecard. And it's going to be similar to the academic annual report. And as you know, the academic report, we have a met or not met across all of our indicators. So we're going to do that same thing on the operations side. So I'm excited to obviously look at that data and then see where we are this fall. Enhanced timely and effective communication and use of mass notification system in a district our size, that's extremely important. So as you know, we've implemented the use of a new website with integration of email communication, text, push notification, and phone calls, and mobile app, which has enhanced and streamlined our communication system. So, for example, if we need to drill down and communicate with a specific segment of the organization, we can do that. Like an example would be transportation, one bus. If we needed to communicate just with the families on that bus, we can do that. Establish collaborative and positive relationships with all employee groups. And again, I mentioned Mr. Rafe's leadership in meeting with the employee groups, but that's also drilled down through the organization with our departments. Our departments, we meet with stakeholders like pupil services, curriculum, HR. We have committees within our associations that we meet with throughout the year that, again, help inform us to make decisions. And I wanted to put this implementation of a K-12 district professional development plan because I always talk about this when people ask me about Olentangy. I've been in 5 districts, and as a principal, this is one of the most amazing things that the district does of aligning our K-12 professional development systemically K-12. So everybody's rowing in the same direction. And like I said, I've been in other districts where it's just random acts of improvement. And here we have an aligned system, which is unbelievable, and obviously our kids benefit from that. And then the Board of Education yearly agenda calendar, that's one thing that the district leadership team does and reviews every year, where we map out the year of Board of Education meetings and presentations that we want in a timely manner across that year for the board. So those are things we've been doing. You know, one of the important things, I talked about the scorecard, but we want to continue to evaluate, collect feedback, and identify gaps for process improvement because like Mr. Rafe mentioned, one of our values, we can always get better, and we don't want to stay stagnant in education, and we want to look for ways that we always can improve our efficiencies without compromising the mission of the district to facilitate maximum learning for every student. Another thing up there, improve two-way communication between the district and stakeholders, and this is important too because we're a large organization. So this is one improvement area where we think we can do better as far as creating that two-way communication between the district and all stakeholders, and then determining how best to do that. So we use some technology platforms that we've done that in the past, and we're going to continue to evaluate that, and that's a goal. And then expand administrative resource library for district operations. Again, we bring all new staff in, and they do go through an orientation induction, but also this is an example. We've created like an HR, human resources administrative class in Schoology where all administrators have access to that, and then they can go. It's a resource library. Anything human resource related, they can just go to and have that as a resource and a tool to use. Okay, next strategic objective is expand our talent management strategy. And so this is a talent management strategy cycle. which starts with planning. And again, how do we allocate resources based on our strategic planning? So we look at our strategic plan, and we almost do a 5-year forecast on how we're going to plan for allocating resources. Recruiting top talent is important for us. As you know, the Olentangy brand is very strong in the state of Ohio. So when people get the opportunity to apply at Olentangy, obviously we get a lot of applicants, so that allows us to have a lot of people in the pool to select the best people that we can for the positions that we post. And then once we select them, the development is extremely important. And again, I already mentioned it. I don't think there's a school district in the state that does a better job of developing its people than Olentangy. It's tremendous from day one when we work through the onboarding process to bring staff in all positions into the district. Retention is also important for us. So, you know, we talk about this, it's about the employee experience. So how can we capture feedback from the employees as they go through their journey in Olentangy? And it's something I'll show on the next slide we're working on. But, you know, from day one, year one, with the employee to year 3 to year 6 to year 15, we're coming up with a system to capture that feedback, to get that data on the employee experience through Olentangy. And then obviously succession planning is extremely important with a district our size. You know, when we have the opportunity to identify in the organization top talent who can be leaders and encourage them to develop and provide them opportunities and experiences, those are things that we're doing. So obviously helps them when opportunities present themselves down the road in the district. Okay? So some of the things specific to talent management. When I first came on board, we had a vision of really looking at the HR process, because quite frankly it was antiquated because we were collecting so much paper. So every day I was like, where's all this paper? Why do we have so much paper? So we went from the online application, which we had, but almost, and we still have some paper, but almost all electronic and digital now with our onboarding process. And this is just a little anecdote, because yesterday we had our first small mini orientation with new teachers. We have five throughout the summer before New Teacher Network, where we bring them in and give them their laptops and go through all the technology and HR and that information. But we had a teacher who used to work for the district, left for a career change, decided he didn't like that career change, and he was a great teacher when he was here before, and we were sorry to see him leave, but now he's coming back. So he was like, he did the paper onboarding previously and then went through the electronic onboarding, and he was raving about it. He was like, it's unbelievable. So obviously that's something that we've totally transformed in the HR department. Fostering pride, educational excellence, and personal achievement through strong organizational brand identity. So behind you are all the brand pillars, and 3 of them are up there. And again, like going to yesterday, just the enthusiasm and excitement of the new teachers coming to Olentangy, like just, I can't believe I was selected for a position in Olentangy. And so there's just so much pride with that brand, and obviously within the organization, people who work here, the same thing. And then I'm just going to connect the next 3 because I think this is important in our talent management strategy to remain competitive in the education space in order to recruit and retain top talent. So we do a really good job working with our associations to negotiate contracts that are fair, and then also work with restructuring our compensation structure to be competitive within education. So those are things that we've evaluated the last few years in order to fairly compensate our workforce. And another thing, and we mentioned this, in an organization our size, we want to broaden the organization broaden the organizational chart horizontally to allow for vertical movement. Because we were finding that we were running into some issues where people aspired to do things within the organization, but we were losing them outside the organization because we didn't have anywhere for them to go. So that structure hopefully will help, again, with our retention. And then provide opportunities for leadership development. I'm not going to get into that because we talked about that last week with Mr. Wright, but again, the opportunities we provide for leadership. Over there where we're going, continue to create professional development leadership opportunities for all employee groups. And again, that's important when I started talking about all employee groups. So professional development for intervention aides, for our bus drivers, for our custodians, that's important, just as we emphasize the professional development for our teachers and administrators. And then that's the journey map that I was talking about. So in conjunction with curriculum and Dr. Fetty's office, we're going to create this journey map that tries to capture the experience of an employee through their tenure in Olentangy. That obviously is going to give us some valuable information with our talent management. And then we mentioned this too, but the state's converting to OTES, that's the evaluation system for teachers, and then OPES for principals 2.0 implementation. So all of our administrators currently are in bridge training for OTES 2.0. I think the first cohort completed last week and this week. So we're moving along with that. Okay, last one, implement a digital conversion. So the goal here is to improve efficiency, effectiveness, and relevance through technology advancements. So, really, when we're looking at these internal processes, anytime that we can automate the workflow to be more efficient and it's meaningful, we want to do that. And we've done a lot of that in the organization, and we'll continue to do that, obviously, as new technologies come in line.
So we're all up here old enough to have filled out the emergency medical form, and every time a kid went on a field trip, you had to fill out another one, and another one, and another one. Finally, we don't do that anymore. So
20 years later, we finally realized, hey, that's a bad idea.
Just
Right.
keep a copy of about 10 of them in your drawer.
Yeah,
Pull them
that's
out
what I
and turn
did,
them
make
in.
copies.
Right. So part of this digital conversion, so implemented unified talent HR platform. So again, I'm going to go segue right over to where we're headed because this is important. So from an employee's application to selection to onboarding, everything is integrated and it's electronic. And the great thing here is, Emily and I had conversations for, probably the last 5 years too, about the disconnect between HR and Treasury. So we're going to be able to integrate pretty much everything across that PowerSchool suite now, from applicant tracking to unified talent to eFinance Plus, which is the new state software that we're implementing right now, to the professional learning. And the professional learning is now what teachers or certified staff, everybody has to fill out a ippy-dippy with goals, and they have to have advanced training every year to renew their license. So we're going to implement that structure, and we have some of that right now, but this is all going to integrate together and talk to all of our systems back and forth with creating the right workflows, right, Emily?
Absolutely.
So we're working through that right now, both teams, Treasury team and the HR team, and spend a lot of time with the implementation. So we're excited about that because I think that's going to just leverage the technology and the efficiencies that we have within the district. Same thing as far as integrating the mass notification system with PowerSchool. What we've been doing, that's going to be, again, like I mentioned, extremely important with communication to the stakeholders we need to communicate with. From the curriculum side, conducted professional development and technology standards and tools, developed anytime, anywhere digital curricular resources, so when teachers are at home now, they have it at their fingertips, or if they're at the library, at the park, wherever they can log on, they'll have the opportunity to do that. And Mr. Rafe had mentioned this, we continue to look at how we can digitize parent processes too, to make it more efficient for families. So for example, back-to-school parent forms, including transportation enrollment. So I think, might have been Mrs. Fiesel, about 5 years ago, you asked the question, hey, can we just survey parents who wants to ride the bus? So COVID caused us to do that last year, and it worked out so well, we're doing it again this year. So right now, we're in the middle of that process, gathering the data of who's going to ride school transportation next year in the fall. New student enrollment process, we've digitized a lot of that work from the New Student Welcome Center. And then our parent volunteer training program, we went totally electronic a couple years ago, and it's unbelievable because we know all of the requirements, all the principals and the secretaries at the building know exactly what parents went to the online training, completed the online training, their background checks, everything's in one system. So secretary and a principal knows immediately when they're done, the parent volunteer is cleared to volunteer in the building. I think we implemented that maybe 2-3 years ago, but it's worked out really well. Digitized certified career fair processes, because with COVID, you would think that everything shut down. Well, we said, how can we still continue to create our pool and attract people to Olentangy, obviously not being able to visit college campuses. So this year, due to COVID, we were able to digitize and electronically do all of those things electronically that we would typically do at traveling to the campuses. And I'm excited about this. This is really important. So this is a major improvement area for us. Implemented advanced district work order programs. A few years ago, this is a huge improvement area for us. So I'll just put it at that. So we had work orders that were stacking up. We didn't know who was doing. We didn't know if they were filled. Principals didn't know it. Custodians didn't know if they were filled. So that's been a huge improvement for us. We're using FMX, so it stands for Facilities Management Express. So that system now will integrate and talk to some of our other systems, but really it's a communication tool where principals, head custodians, maintenance all know when work orders are put in, and then we prioritize them, high, medium, and low. And high typically is if it's a safety issue. That's a high priority, and then we need to get on it. Another thing that we did with that is we realized, and again, this is from conversations with our custodial and maintenance group, the people on the ground doing the work, we looked at how we deploy our resource across our schools, and we changed that a couple years ago in how we deploy our maintenance team in our schools, which is a lot more effective now. Before, they would just come in and go wherever and all over the district. Now, they're assigned to a specific geographic region and a school, and they all know how to do general maintenance. So it's part of the training. So the general maintenance, they can just do at their schools. And then some of the higher end maintenance with like HVAC, plumbing, obviously we have trained people to do that, and we'll continue to train others. So we're excited about that. And I also have up there launch transportation bus parent app, because Lori has been here and talked about that. Last year we did not do that due to COVID, but we've tested a few routes in the spring pre-COVID, so we're going to get back to test a few more in the fall, and the goal is to launch that to all parents this fall.
That's the one that's kind of like find your phone. You can see
Yeah.
where your kid is
You
on
can follow
the bus at any
the
given
bus
time.
and the route, and so
Yeah.
obviously we're pretty good with timing. That's one of our metrics, but yes, you'll be able to follow the bus through the route. And
Todd, would that work within the Olentangy app, or would it be a separate app that parents sign up for if their children opt into transportation?
Right now, it's a separate app, but we could see if we could integrate it into, that would be good.
I have a question about the attendance software. Like when the state changed their attendance
For hours?
reporting, it was a huge tax on our staff. I don't know where we're at with that. Is there
Student attendance?
Yes.
He said for sure, don't call on me, but I have to call on him.
There's really been no update to that process. It's still going to be a chore. I think the state's still working on EMIS improvements, allegedly, but I'm not sure the timeline.
Say no more. Thank you.
Do you have any more? I have a couple.
One question in regards to the employee feedback. So we've been voted greatest place to work before. How does one earn that acknowledgement, and is that part of any of this employee feedback?
So obviously, yes, we like to receive that award, so we've decided to do that every 2 years. And it's anonymous. It goes to every employee in the organization, again, from bus driver to custodian to teacher. And then they ask specific questions on culture, engagement, and then when they get the data back, then they compare us to other organizations like Olentangy, and then depending on how we score, then we get the award. So I think we've applied, or we've done a survey 3 times, and we've received it all 3 times.
Okay, and just a warning, I also I'm appointed for Olentangy to the Delaware Area Career Center Board, and we have a new superintendent there, and they're kind of looking at the employee onboarding protocol, so I might have thrown your name out there.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Mr. Marchetti, they've been here, so
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
We love to share our story, so we have districts call and come in all the time.
Well, we onboard a lot of employees
Sure.
every year, so, and I've heard great feedback about it, so
Yeah.
I shared your name.
I have
you.
a couple questions. Do you know how many applications you got yet this year? I know you usually give us an update in the
Yeah,
fall.
I'll update that in August. A lot.
Okay. And
That's safe to
are
say.
you still in the process of hiring for fall?
We are. We're almost done, but we just got another resignation today, so some resignations will trickle in here till the July 10th deadline. So as of late last week, we had 11 certified vacancies still, and I think we filled 3 or 4 of those, maybe 5. And we're in the interview process and making progress. And then, our certified's a little bit different because it's more dynamic, so we're always hiring, classified, we're always hiring classified staff. So we're continuing to work on that, but we plan to be fully staffed when school starts in August.
Do you know how many certified positions you had to put in place for growth this year?
Yes, 50, I want to say 50, I'll say 52-ish.
Okay. And then finally, you talked about professional development, and I think that a lot of people don't realize that there's professional development going on a lot in this building when we're not in COVID.
Right.
But now we're doing it virtually, but also in this building, all the time.
All the time.
During days after school. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's actually a process improvement we implemented 4 years ago about assigning professional development and when people can ask for professional development, because we're a large organization. So we typically do professional development in this building on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We don't do Mondays and Fridays because in our attendance metric, that's where we have the most absences across the year on Mondays and Fridays. And then we break it up with elementary professional development on one of the days, secondary professional development days, and then central office. So we'll do a lot of professional development through the curriculum department, through pupil services, through technology. So we organize that across the organization, where then our employees do come here in this room and upstairs in the orange room, Liberty Room, even some of the smaller spaces are pretty much utilized every day for professional development. And one thing I didn't mention, and Mr. Rafe talks about this all the time, creating the conditions for our employees to be successful. And in our schools, the structure we have in place for our employees to collaborate, which to me is probably the best professional development you can receive when you sit down with a grade level team or a department team of teachers around a table and work on curriculum, you work on assessments, you work on instruction. And again, as a building principal for 14 years, those were some of the most powerful professional development sessions that I ever observed. So we do that daily in our schools.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have the Olentangy Education Foundation update, and we have Rachel Hulk. She's the Foundation Executive Director. And thank you for coming.
Absolutely, thanks for having me. Is it this button? Todd? That one? Yes. Okay, thank you. There we go. Good evening, my name is Rachel Hauk. I am the Executive Director of Olentangy Education Foundation, or OEF, which is a nonprofit organization that has been supporting Olentangy schools since 1990 by supporting and funding enhanced educational experiences for students within the district. Through a variety of programs that I'm going to touch on as we go on. OEF's focus is on supporting Olentangy schools at the district level, providing complementary support to PTOs and to booster groups. Oops. OEF trustees are community volunteers and school representatives dedicated to enhancing academic excellence by supporting Olentangy schools staff and students through private fundraising initiatives. At the present time, there are 16 members of the board of directors, 4 of which are appointed positions that represent the school district. The mission of the foundation is to enhance the education experience in Olentangy schools, which the foundation does through several programs. The first of which, and the primary focus, is on grants. Providing classroom grants via private fundraising initiatives. Grants are awarded to classrooms across the district for innovative programs and learning opportunities that fall outside of school budgets. Olentangy teachers and staff are able to complete grant applications for consideration on an annual basis. We're still wrapping up the 2020 grant cycle, so I can give you some highlights of last year's 2020 grants. Last year, in 2020, OEF granted just over $60,000 to Olentangy classrooms via 24 separate grants. Those grants touched every single building in the district and impacted around 11,000 students. Every year, there is a wide range in the size and the purpose of the grants. Last year, individual grants ranged from $500 to just over $6,000 and provided support for a variety of programs with everything from books to garden materials, art supplies to microscopes, math manipulatives to classroom technology. And I have a few examples of those that I'd like to share with you. So the verbiage I have on the screen is out of the teacher's grant applications. The first grant that I'm going to share with you is the water project. It was a grant that was awarded to a teacher at Johnny Cake Corners and focused on the curriculum surrounding the book A Long Walk to Water, which is a story that is about an 11-year-old girl who lives in Sudan and has to walk to a pond, which is a 2-hour walk twice a day every day to collect water for her family. The grant supplied the teacher with a classroom set of those novels, as well as complimentary books and access to a speaker. The project began this last year when students read A Long Walk to Water, as well as other literature that built their background information on the global water crisis. They then had a speaker who had firsthand experience with the water crisis in Sudan share his story with the students. And then the students followed up with a service project to benefit those affected by the global water crisis. One of my favorite parts about this grant is that OEF was able to pair the grant recipient, the teacher who received the grant, with Delco, who is a longtime supporter of OEF. And they were able to work with the teacher and provide further expertise on the project. The next is integrating microscopy with technology. Last year, several science teachers at Olentangy Orange High School got together and submitted a request for digital microscopes for use in biology, honors biology, forensics, and some other science classes. The digital microscopes, which you can see in that top photo, allow for group work as multiple students can view the screen at the same time versus traditional microscopes, which can only accommodate individual use. The teachers reported that the ability for students to collaborate increased interest, engagement, and learning. OEF was able to provide 40 microscopes, which, because of the collaboration, supplied 5 classrooms. Another fun feature of the digital microscopes is the ability for our students to take pictures. So you can see an image a group of students took with one of those microscopes, which is the bottom picture. That is a cat whisker that the group studied during their hair analysis project. And the last grant I'm going to highlight is the Orange Middle School Creativity Center, which received their second grant this past year. In 2019, OEF awarded materials and supplies to get the Creativity Center up and running, which transformed the flexible learning environment in the atrium to a space where students could visually express their creativity and their voice. After demonstrating what a success that was, the teachers returned last year with another grant request to continue building the Creativity Center by incorporating technology. So at this point, if you were interested in hearing more about the grants, I had the opportunity to sit down with 2 grant recipients this past year and do a virtual interview. The teachers do a much better job about talking about these grants than I can, but the video was long, and due to time constraints, I'm not able to show it tonight. So if you would be interested, you can pull out your cell phone and scan the QR code, or you can find the video on the OEF YouTube channel and look for Grants in Action. So the grants provide a big impact on Olentangy classrooms. And while that is the primary focus, OEF does support the schools through a variety of other programs as well. OEF hosts the Staff Shout-Out Program. It was formerly the Staff Accommodation Program, a program that allows district families an opportunity to recognize and thank Olentangy staff that have gone above and beyond for their students. The shout-out comment is not only sent to the staff member who is being honored, but to that person's supervisor and district leadership as well. We get feedback every time we share those with leadership about how wonderful it is to see all the positive comments that parents are leaving about the students that are, about the staff that are supporting their students. This past year, the district, or the OEF, facilitated more than 1,000 of those shout-outs. The foundation has also traditionally supported the Teacher and Employee of the Year program by providing recognition and opportunities to celebrate the honorees. In cooperation with the district's communications department, OEF established the Olentangy Schools Alumni Association last year. The goal of the Alumni Association is to provide an opportunity for alumni of all Olentangy schools. First and foremost, an opportunity to stay in touch with each other, but also an opportunity to stay in touch with the school district and the Olentangy community. As a large district with a long history, the biggest challenge the Alumni Association has faced thus far is getting in touch with prior alum. It's my hope that through some alumni who have volunteered to help and through student interns that we can connect with some more alumni over the coming year. And lastly, the foundation is in the process of getting a program up and running that will support the district's staff recruitment efforts by mentoring pre-service teachers. All of the programs that I have mentioned and everything OEF does is funded by private fundraising initiatives. The foundation raises funds throughout the year through a number of different channels. Corporate sponsorships play an essential role, and OEF is extremely thankful for the local businesses that continue to support the foundation year over year. Individuals support the foundation's mission by donating in a variety of ways. Most donors make general donations that support overall mission of the organization. Other donors have established endowed and non-endowed funds. These funds provide long-term support to the organization and can create a legacy of remembrance or a way to honor the person or group for which the fund is named, while other donors have chosen to support OEF via planned giving or through a donation made through their will. In addition, OEF hosts 2 annual fundraising events. There is a golf outing in the fall, and the biggest event, which is Olentangy in August. There we go. As I mentioned, Olentangy is the biggest fundraiser event of the year, and I am personally thrilled that we get to have this event this coming August after having to take last summer off. For those of you who weren't able to join in 2019, Olentangy is a fun event held in the district at the Africa Event Center at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. We have grant recipients on site to share about their grants and the impact those grants have made in their classrooms. And of course, because it's at the zoo, there's giraffes to feed and other animals to interact with. This event is open to the public, so anyone who would like to attend, this is your invitation, so please join us. Tickets can be found on the OEF website. Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about the work that we're doing to support the community and the way that the work that we're doing to improve the education experience in Olentangy schools. I would encourage anybody in the Olentangy community to find a way of getting involved with the foundation, either through volunteering, through becoming a donor, or attending an event. The foundation is grateful for the opportunity to support Olentangy schools. If you have further questions, there's more information available on the website, or I'm happy to answer questions now.
Dave, you serve on this board, so
He does.
do you have anything you want to add?
It's a great group of people, and really good, interesting. Well, we had a meeting just the other night, and just great conversation talking about the different projects. Everybody's excited about Olentangy coming back, so yeah, it's a nice variety, too, of their professional backgrounds, so it works very well.
I know I got my tickets.
All right.
Can't wait to
I haven't
go.
ordered mine yet, but I'm
Yeah.
going to.
I have to, it sold out
It did. It sold out 2 years ago.
It was a very fun
Yeah.
event.
It did.
How many tickets are there? Do you have a finite number?
We're capped at 400.
And then I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind the board, we have a fund.
We do.
With the Olentangy Education Foundation. It's a board's fund. We're working towards endowment, and I'm sure it's time for us to we donate a month of our salaries.
Which is $250.
Right, to the fund, so,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, the board president's report. I have to check my phone because my coworkers were going to let me know if the budget was released, and they haven't texted me. That's what we're waiting for. I had hoped to have an update on the status of the state's budget, which includes a school funding plan, but the conference committee hasn't reported anything out yet. They were thinking that it would be by this evening, so I have some of my coworkers stayed back at the office to wait and see if we had any information, but fortunately not. We thought it would be today, but now it's looking like it might not be until tomorrow. We're hoping that it doesn't go over the weekend. Again, the state must pass a budget by June 30th because the new fiscal year starts July 1, and no school district in the state knows what funding will look like in the next 7 days, after July 1. We have no idea. We only have a forecast based on assumptions, but we do not know what our funding will be for next year, so stay tuned. But I want to thank everybody for attending tonight's school board meeting, and just as a reminder, the board meetings are to conduct the business of the board so that the school district can operate. The presentations that we hear provide us with information as to the day-to-day operations, which are overseen by the superintendent and the treasurer. Those are the two positions that we oversee, and those are the only two positions that we oversee. But in order to carry out much of the board business, the school board relies on experts from our community. And there are 4 committees that our school board, that are direct reports to the school board. And those are the Finance and Audit Committee, the Policy Committee, the Facilities Committee, and the School Advocacy Committee. 2 board members are assigned as liaisons to each committee, and we attend those meetings to provide some direction. The committees are made up of all volunteers who dedicate their time to serve the school district. As we close out our fiscal year, I want to personally thank all the members who have served on these committees for this year for their contributions. I feel we don't recognize them enough, but it is with their expertise and guidance that we are able to make well-informed decisions. For example, our Facilities Committee, which Dave was a founding member of, they really guide us in when we need to build the next building, when we need to do any kind of renovations. People on those committee are engineers, architects, facility managers, and they really put their expertise to work. We don't pay them to do this, and they put their expertise to work. So when they say, hey, we got to look at a new HVAC system, or something like that, or concrete. Or they
Focused
also
heavy on roofing this year.
Yeah,
so.
roofing was big. Or they also look at our enrollment data every single year. That's the group that looks at our enrollment reports. We couldn't do it without them. Our Finance and Audit Committee is made up of CPAs and business managers and finance experts, and they look at our 5-year forecast every year. And so without those people, we couldn't make some of the informed decisions that we do make. So I want to really thank them, because I feel that sometimes we forget to thank them. But speaking of recognition, at our July 8th school board meeting, we will be recognizing the students for their accomplishments that weren't recognized in April. So we'll get the spring accomplishments, and our community volunteers. The meeting will start in the Berlin High School auditorium with the recognition ceremony, and then we will proceed to the Berlin Library to conduct the rest of the business meetings, just like we have before. We've done it at Olentangy before, where we do the recognition, then move to the library, but this next meeting we will be at Berlin. And this is similar to what we did in April, when we recognized fall and winter accomplishments from our students, but this time we're going to do spring and then the recognition of our volunteers. Again, the meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m. in the Berlin High School Theater, and then proceed to the library. And that is all I have. Superintendent's report, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I got a lot of, even though it's summer and we're not in session, I got a lot of great stuff to share with you. As Mr. Swazi kind of gave us a little preview or update on the security vestibules, I wanted to do that as well. You see here Heritage Elementary, Johnny Cake Corners Elementary, and Orange High School, some vestibules under construction. So all the elementary schools will be very similar with that secondary entrance that then we'll have people buzz in to go into the main office. At Orange High School and Liberty High School, that are the same design. There's a ticket booth in the front of the building that'll be taken out, and then a secondary entrance will be added there, so that people have to come into a secure area and be buzzed into the building. And we obviously built Berlin High School like that. You see here 2 pictures, the high school journalism studios that were part of the bond package. I really give a kind of shout out to the Orange High School journalism program, and Mr. Bryan, I remember Maddie was in that program for a while ago. They really took off and ran with our broadcast journalism program, and have done an incredible job of and they were filming out of basically a closet. And then we transformed a classroom into a journalism studio, and it is professional quality. They broadcast live sporting events, and I mean, they do debates, and they did a telethon, and they've just done so much. And the other schools are playing catch up on it, but as part of the last bond package, we are putting in those journalism studios in the other 3 high schools. And I look forward to the day to getting a shout out from some kid who's an ESPN sports anchor saying it all started at my high school journalism program in Olentangy. And then the other thing I'm really proud of is our playground updates that are taking place so that all of our students will be able to fully participate in the playground experiences. So you see there the ADA compliant playgrounds and the soft surfaces, and I tell you, our elementary staffs are really excited about not having to, I think elementary parents will be really excited about not having to take rocks out of their washing machines. So
The toes shoes.
replace shoes, and so so we're really proud of that that was all part of the bond package. Again, as a sign of our returning to normalcy, our kindergarten screenings are taking place in our elementary schools, so those are in full process as we've been moving through. Here in the summer, numbers are looking real solid. I think we'll have obviously more kindergartners here this year, since I think a lot of people redshirted their kindergartners last year. Another thing, again, as a sign to returning to normalcy, is that we have camps happening all over the district. Elementary and middle school students are, again, all over the district doing their sports camps. You see some baseball, and it looks like football and soccer, and Amanda I think you had some fun going out taking pictures of all the activity all over the district. It's just great to see it all happening. So again, really proud of that. I want to make sure I take an opportunity to give a shout out to our custodial staff. It is amazing. The people walk out of the building on that last Friday of our teacher workday, and then Monday morning, every classroom in the district is emptied out into the hallways, and wax is stripped and floors are scrubbed, and everything is obviously deep cleaned and repaired. And if you walk in any of our buildings, it looks like a war zone. There's just stuff everywhere. And then all of a sudden it gets put back together which virtually like the blink of an eye, and our custodians just do an amazing job. So I just want to make sure I highlight the work that they're doing now, because they are busting their tails to get it ready. I come back every year, and our oldest buildings look brand new, and the new ones look, again, just as good as the day they opened. So thanks to all the custodians and maintenance staff that make that happen. We do have summer intervention and extended school year services happening all throughout the district. So you see here some small group and individualized learning with our intervention specialists and our Orton Gillingham tutors all throughout the district. So that's, again, great work. Some of these students are getting provided some extended school year due to some learning loss that happened over the course of this year. But I have every confidence that we will have everybody caught up to where they need to be. Again, our data indicates real strong results, so we're looking forward to when the state testing results come back here, because I have great confidence they'll be excellent again. I want to highlight Herschel N., who is from Liberty Middle School. He made it to the Scripps National Spelling Bee, so congratulations to him and his family. He made it to the quarterfinals, so the top 16 in the country. It's a great accomplishment for him. As I always like to do, is highlight some action items. Bless you. We have some administrative resignations here on the agenda, and some administrative employment. You see a pretty long list there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think, of these people here. So if I call your name, you will please stand and be recognized. We have Erica Boone, who's currently at Arrowhead Elementary, is going to be our supervisor for gifted. Monica Brown is coming to us from the ESC of Central Ohio as our assistant director for elementary curriculum and instruction. Erica Harris is coming to us from Columbus Schools as the assistant principal at Liberty Tree, and she brought her family and her children. Welcome. I remember doing that one time, Erica, a long time ago. My kids, a funny story is there was a very long board meeting in Westerville, and I woke up the next morning and my daughter said to me, "Dad, I think I know why they call it a board meeting." So, they never came to another one. Matthew Jordan, who's previously a math teacher at Olentangy High School, is going to Berkshire Middle School. Is he here? He's here. Yeah, he's here. There you go. Stephen Lewis is a business teacher at Orange High School, is going to be a supervisor in equity and inclusion.
She's so excited.
I can't, you're a proud mother, you're a proud wife, I'm sorry, that's right. Michael Schmidt, Assistant Principal at Hyatt's Middle School, excuse me, too many B's, Hyatt's Middle School, is coming to us from Upper Arlington. And Mindy Schultz, who was at Arrowhead, is moving over into our curriculum department to be a supervisor for academic intervention. Did I get everybody here? I miss anybody? But anyway, so thank you all and congratulations. We look forward to joining our administrative team. Now you talk, now. Some other action items, I want to, we always, every year we have to renew our district property fleet and liability insurance company. We use Liberty Mutual, we have for years. That obviously is a big number, $445,000. That's up from about $405,000 from last year. We are adding some additional buses, and it just seems that insurance coverage across the spectrum is up. So, Mr. O'Brien, I know that's always a...
It is a, what they call a hard market, where premiums are going up and coverages are going down, so I'm not surprised. I mean, I looked at the material and it appears reasonable, but yeah, it's
and we put this out for a request for proposal every 2 years and try to obviously stay as competitive as possible. So, and we'll be doing that again next year. We have been with Liberty Mutual for quite a while, and they've been a good partner for us. So. There is a change order to the paving contract that we approved at Olentangy High School. When we got in to do the work there, we found through our own examination by Heiberger that there was some significant subsurface damage that needed to be repaired with some concrete reinforcing, so it was not within the scope of the original bid work, so we do have to do a change order there. We have the tap fee for Shale Meadows, so this is kind of like one of the final things in the opening of our school, so we will be connecting our sewer system to the Delaware County Regional Sewer System, and then HVAC improvements at Shanahan Middle School with McAvoy Geiger Mechanical. So those are some big ticket items. And then, as Mrs. Fiesel noted, our next Board of Education meeting. So with that, any questions?
I do not.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Hatfield, you're up with the treasurer's report.
Good evening, everybody. I know Mrs. Fiesel gave you an update on our anticipation of the Fair School Funding Plan, and hopefully having some of that information released today, but perhaps we will see it in the morning. I just wanted to give you a couple of bullet points on why it's important to look at the differences between the Fair School Funding Plan and what the Senate was discussing in their first proposal. The Senate funding base was proposed at $6,110 per student, while the House was at $7,200 per student. And the biggest difference in that lied in the student support component of the funding model. Seemed really odd to me that the biggest gap that we had was in the student support metric, when that's what it's all about, is funding our students. So that's one of the items that they are working through. The other component item that is really critical is the metric that they use to calculate the wealth of a district, because that component deals with how much of a local share should that community support their school district with. The Senate's proposal was using the current state share index, which we know is very flawed. That's one of the items that is in the current funding model that looks at Olentangy and says we have high property wealth, we have very good valuations, we should be able to afford to have continued levies to support our students. The other issue that we have with not only the mechanism or the calculation that it's using, the Senate also had old data. So new data is released, new property valuations are available, as well as new income indices, which should change what that index looks like. The Fair School Funding Plan changed how that calculation would be put into law. It would look at property valuation, but it would also look at local income levels and do a 60-40 split of that calculation versus all property values. The other thing that the House did is it discontinues the ranking of each school against each other. So our state share index was ranked against Hilliard, was ranked against Dublin, and we just kind of be shuffled through that 610 of us, one on top of the other, to figure out who would get what part of that funding. The House version takes that out of the equation and just looks at each district on its own. So that's a good component to keep. It helps us not to be in competition for what's available through state funding, but truly fund the students where they are. So those are some of the key components that we were trying to support and hope that the Senate will concede to, or at least bring into their proposal. The final, the conference committee is comprised of representatives. Please forgive me, I'm terrible with pronouncing names. But Olentangy, who is a Republican, Plummer, who's also Republican, and Crawley, who's Democratic. Our senators are on the committee are Dolan and Gavarone, who are Republican, and Sykes, who is Democratic. So as Mrs. Fiesel currently stated, we hope to have some more information tomorrow about where that conference committee has landed and what will be going to the governor for his approval. They have until June 30th to sign that bill into law. Some of the action items that we have on the agenda this evening are listed on the screen for you. Just to give the audience an understanding of what some of those items are, we have a lot of jargon or accounting notation that is part of some of the work that we do. So our final appropriation adjustments for fiscal year 2020, that is final adjustments for budgets. We are making sure that we have the budgets approved and adjusted for any increases that may have been needed before we close the books for our fiscal year. Currently, we are scheduled to close out fiscal year 21 on Monday. So we will be wrapping up those changes and making sure we are in compliance for our next audit. It feels like we just ended one. Our May board financials are we're comparing those to our May 5-year forecast adjustments. Revenue is slightly higher, but not material compared to the 5-year forecast. Our expenditures are lower than anticipated for the month. However, we're still seeing some delay in either the billing that we're getting from our services or back orders of materials. So what we anticipate that we're going to see is being under budget again in our purchase services and supplies and materials, but we'll have perhaps a higher encumbrance when we close the books because we're still waiting for those bills and items to be processed and come into the district. Overall, we have, again, just to notate for the audience, we have already spent all coronavirus relief funds early in the fiscal year, mostly on PPE. But we did have some broadband funding, which helped get more remote devices in the hands of our students and to enhance our wireless access around the building so students could use that as we were remote. And we did have some small ESSER funding from the first round, which was about $247,000, but that was spent early on as well. We did not receive ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 funding. So those big dollars that some of our other neighboring districts are using to help support future growth or building, we are not eligible for. We have board meeting minutes, permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2022. Those are establishing our budgets by fund for next fiscal year. At our previous meeting, we approved at a object level the general fund as we prepared the 5-year forecast for you, but our remaining funds budgets are set and approved at a fund level. Donations, we continue to be in awe of the donations that we receive. Thank you to all of our generous donors who are listed on the screen. We have, Alum Creek PTO, an anonymous donor donating technology to Olentangy Meadows. We have Science Labware to Olentangy Orange High School, and additional funds from the athletic boosters at Olentangy Orange for some supplemental coaching. All of those continue to help service our students and maximize their education when funds are not available for those particular items. So we appreciate those, and we continue to appreciate our community for their in-kind donations of time and support. The final item that I have for action item tonight is a transfer recommendation from the general fund to the food service fund for $1.5 million. This transfer, again, we had a lengthy discussion about this with Mrs. Linko at our last board meeting, explaining the summer season program and how the funding for the free meals, breakfast and lunch were available, and how that funding evolved. We also know that having our students in a hybrid schedule hurt the revenue stream that she normally sees. So we had originally set aside about $2.5 million or so in the 5-year forecast as a transfer. I'm happy to say that we're only recommending 1.5, so that is a decrease from our previous assumptions, largely due to students coming back in full-time and having that full revenue stream for Mrs. Linko and her department. So we're excited to have that number come down. The total for fiscal year 20 and 2021 will be $3 million. We are anticipating that we can do a small arrangement or a stretch out a payback situation for the fund at about $500,000 each year of the next 6 years, so that they can get back, reserves can build, they can continue to replace equipment as needed, but also pay back the general fund. So we'll make arrangements with that, and you'll start to see that on the coming back in on the 5-year forecast assumptions moving forward in fiscal 2023. Are there questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions? No?
Fantastic,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll let you get back to your seat because you have to...
Thank you.
Because you have to get ready for public participation is next. And I'll remind everybody that we have a total of 30 minutes. Each statement will be read by the participant, has 5 minutes. Mrs. Hatfield is our timekeeper because she's our official keeper of all of our minutes and all of our everything, all of our records. She's our official record keeper. And so when you come up, I believe Heather Lance collected them and gave them to you, and they're read in the order that they were collected. Okay?
Absolutely.
So when you're ready, you can get your timer set and...
Absolutely. So I think at our last board meeting, it's very difficult to hear when that microphone is active and mine is turned off. So we're going to use the timer. Hopefully that's a little more helpful this evening. But as Mrs. Fiesel stated, we would ask that each person come to the podium in order that they were received. They have 5 minutes. And so our first participant, is Miss Pam Lewis. Mrs. Lewis, would you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Pamela J. Lewis, and my address is on Winfield Drive in Lewis Center, Ohio, 43035. Lewis Center, Ohio, no relation.
Thank you, ma'am.
To my knowledge. Okay?
Ma'am, you're free to
Okay.
start. Thank you.
So good evening. My name is Pamela Lewis, and I have been a resident of this community since 2006, and my family has been in the school since 2007. 2 of my 3 children attended the elementary and middle schools in the district, and both graduated from Olentangy Orange High School. Currently, I am a full-time working professional, and I have had the true honor to be a community volunteer. This volunteerism has been part of who I am as a mother, a spouse, a Christian, an activist, an African-American woman that has sought after and seen a lot of positive changes. Through good and bad, triumphs and challenges, I personally have always stayed true to what I believe is essential to demonstrate hope, while sharing my gifts that are God-given, and to speak life and love to those around me. As we all know, in recent times, there have been a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. There has been some mistrust, misunderstanding, and dare I say, evil trying to permeate throughout our beloved community. Ladies and gentlemen, my reason for being here this evening is twofold: to commend great efforts towards mitigating counterproductive behavior and to encourage effective conversations that will result in the outcome we all want for our community, for the children, which embodies the mission of OLSD. This is to facilitate maximum learning for every student. I'm grateful of the district's effort to support and provide education in a way where it benefits all students. These efforts show the true commitment towards excellence and focuses on the overall success. Even during difficult occurrences, the district leans into hard conversations by listening, engaging, and attempting to do what is required to meet the vision of being a recognized leader for high performance and efficiency in education. I know that some of the outcomes are unpopular. However, the key players constantly demonstrate both personal and administrative accountability to own the hard decisions while attempting to do better. The district recognizes when they may not get it right, and they are willing to adjust accordingly. To that end, I also commend the community efforts created within the grassroots organizations that advocate for equal treatment of all students and staff within the district. The awareness, the accountability, and action taken result in strategized outcomes for a purposeful encounter with key leaders in the buildings as well as throughout the district's enterprise. The techniques of learning, circles, and comprehending historical relevance provide key attributes to the way forward to understand and implement for the overall community. This perseverance helps to break down echo chambers for students and for families that support them so that the ongoing positive exchange is fluid and frequent. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that we don't all agree. However, I encourage positive discussions within the community for those that have concerns and/or questions that may enable better understanding and refocus commitment to our students, our youth, our young adults, our old adults, our beloved community. When my family and I relocated here, it was always under the expectation of providing excellent opportunities for our children while participating in their success. I believe a lot of that has been met with much more to come. I feel we must be willing to learn from each other, share perspectives and each other, and be comfortable about having difficult conversations so to balance the strategies and apply them to what can be deemed more harmonious than chaotic. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Embrace differences so we can empower and focus on commonalities that we have. Respect each other. There has been great work accomplished through equity and inclusion, and the best diversity is the diversity of thought. Let us keep the momentum as we continue to demonstrate what I learned to call the unforced rhythm of grace.
That was 5 minutes, please.
Okay, so then I won't read Philippians 4:8. Y'all can read that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for being respectful with that timer. I'm sorry it interrupts. Next, we have Janine King. you would please state your name and your address for the record, and then we'll start your 5 minutes.
Janine King, 4584 Grayson Drive in Palo, Ohio. And I think it's like divine providence that she and I met in the parking lot, because I'm just going to start by saying she basically summed up what I decide. I have written this, and I'm like, I'm not going to really talk about that anymore. Some of it I am, but the majority of it not. For everyone in this room, I think if we actually sat down and talked and got rid of the anger and got rid of the pitting two sides against each other and really actually conversed about what we all want, I think we would actually all agree on 99.9% of the stuff, right? What I have taught my kids from the beginning of their lives is to respect a person. Actually, not even a person, a soul. Respect a soul. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your sexual preference is or what religion you are. That is what I've always taught my kids. And we do the work. This is not to toot my own horn. This is just to let everyone in this know, right? I have taken my kids year after year into the inner city. This year we actually tutored kids in the inner city who weren't able to go to school because their schools were closed and don't have access to the support that they need. I have, for the last 4 summers, also done the same thing with groups of kids within this school district where we've gone down and spent weeks down there on mission. So that is what needs to happen. Conversation needs to happen. Bullying is real in this district. It is happening to kids of every color, every gender, everything. And I am an expert on bullying because I was bullied horribly in high school, to the point where I almost committed suicide. I was that kid sitting on my parents' bedroom floor when they were out with my dad's gun in my hand. I know bullying. I don't want any kid ever. I don't care what color you are, what gender you are. I keep saying that, but I really don't. Kids need to be loved and they need to be respected for no matter what diversity of thought they have or diversity of how they've been brought up. Every individual has their own lived experience in this world, and we need to learn from those lived experiences. I had a great conversation in Mr. Rafe's office with Mr. Rafe and Dr. Fetty one day. You're going to hold me to the 5-minute timer because that's policy in this room. 30-minute public participation, also policy. I think you would eliminate 99.9% of your issues if teachers were held to the same policies when it came to the curriculum items that we've talked about in the past. Things that are even remotely controversial. We all know right now things are high. People's anxieties are high. Anger is high. Anything that's even remotely controversial, just bring it to the parents and say, hey, we want to bring this to your kids, and this is the reason why. What appears to some as slipping it under the radar is not good. Not in this environment. It just leads to more of this. And we don't want this. We want good discussion in the classroom, to both sides represented, so that people can start to learn from each other. That's the only way we're going to move together as a school, as a community, and as a nation, and as a world, by looking to the others and learning from them. That is it.
Thank you. Mrs. Donna Goel, please.
My name is Donna Gaywell, and I live at 383 Slate Crossing Drive in Delaware, 43015. As a retired educator, I am here to support those who are not in a safe position to speak. I believe all who sit before me aspire to be hardworking and honorable people. I assumed you were unaware of the false and harmful information being taught by some of your teachers and invited speakers. The board states we completely and utterly reject critical race theory. Instead, it appears you either agree or are afraid to push back against the destructive forces within your district. In fact, the district allows teachers and diversity administrators to repackage the harmful ideas of CRT and teach them under other labels. Programming sponsored by your district shows significant components of CRT are in fact being actively promoted. The board members and staff learned about critical race theory and other cultural Marxist ideologies during district book studies and conferences that you approved. Books such as this one, written by Ibram X. Kendi, the leader of the anti-racist movement, were on your reading list. Why haven't you taken steps to stop those administrators and teachers who are intent on promoting this dangerous ideology? We object to the indoctrination of our children. As an author of history, I have a keen understanding of how leaders use youth to achieve their evil goals. When the Nazis in Germany rose to power, they targeted their children for indoctrination in an organization known as Hitler Youth. In 1692, history showed another example of how adults with corrupt and personal and financial motives manipulated foolish and highly emotional young girls. I caution the board to take a lesson about what happened in the aftermath when 20 people were killed. Citizens who didn't stand against this atrocity worked hard to disassociate themselves from the facts. They even renamed Salem Village to Danvers so the world might forget what their weakness of character had caused. Is this going to be the fate of those who allowed profiteering activists to infiltrate our school system? Instead of destroying statues of Ohio pioneers, the district is considering eliminating or drastically altering the third graders' Pioneer Day experience. The diversities community notes to the superintendents described Pioneer Day as a tea party where characters dressed up. In fact, Pioneer Day was a high-quality experience designed by your teachers and professionals from the Delaware Historical Society. Unfortunately, the staff from the diversity department purposely misinformed the community in order to eliminate this wonderful experience. One of the diversity coordinators told me that Pioneer Day isn't inclusive of the district's minority students. Her line of thinking puzzled me. As a historian, when I go to Auschwitz, Gettysburg, or the Plymouth Plantation, I'm not looking to be included in their history. We need to teach children to learn and appreciate the real history and culture of others rather than applying this egocentric and misguided approach. When the stakes for our children and country are so high, to be silent is to be complicit. I quote Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who warned the world about totalitarianism. There always is this fallacious belief, it would not be the same here. Here such things are impossible. Solzhenitsyn laments, alas, the evils of the 20th century are possible everywhere on earth. I descend from partisans of the Polish Home Army who, tired of waiting for the world to save them from World War II, or to help them during World War II, Poland's citizens rose up against Hitler's oppression. Unfortunately, their fate after the war meant that those who fought for freedom became the targets of Russian communist occupiers. They were hunted down and assassinated because they fought for freedom. My great-uncle was one of those the Russians killed. I view the righteous parents in this audience and around the country as the Home Army fighting for their children's souls. Parents and voters must ask ourselves, in whom can we have confidence? Where is your moral compass? I beg you, please research the harmful ideologies you have brought into the schools using our tax dollars.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Forgive me, I believe it's Susanna Stedman? Or is it Suzanne? I'm sorry.
It's Susanna.
Okay, thank you.
All right. My question for the board tonight is, what is the district planning on for regards to the COVID vaccine? My hope is that there would not be a mandate, but the vaccine would be voluntary. There have been several studies released lately raising serious questions about the vaccine. Just yesterday, members of the CDC Advisory Committee acknowledged that 1,200 cases of heart inflammation of 16 to 24-year-olds of the COVID vaccine, and they said that it should carry a warning statement. Many institutions and employers, when faced with potential litigation over mandating the vaccine prior to the FDA approval, have chosen to suspend and withdraw their mandates rather than engage in litigation. In fact, many employers are choosing not to mandate it, even if it receives full FDA approval. I believe that students and staff should have the right, plain and simple, to choose to receive or not to receive this without a religious or medical exemption. My goal is not to stop it from those who want to get it, just make it not mandatory. What will Olentangy do if one of their students is permanently injured or worse because they have felt compelled by the district to receive this injection? Has OLSD considered what its damages, financial and otherwise, might be in that situation? There will be continued legal challenges to the mandates. Likely there will be legal challenges to licensure as well. In those contexts, is it possible for a court to find that the vaccines are experimental? I know that you take the health and well-being of all the students and staff, like you have done, seriously this year and the year to come. The bottom line message is this: a mandate is not legal now because the product is under emergency use authorization, and by that definition is experimental. Before you implement such a plan, please consider that even though many school vaccination requirements for licensed and approved vaccines have been upheld in court, no court has ever upheld a mandate for an emergency use authorization vaccine, which all COVID vaccines are at this present. In fact, a federal court has held the EUA vaccines cannot be mandated to soldiers in the U.S. military, who they have fewer rights than we do as civilians. Doe number 1 versus Rumsfeld 297. The court remarkably held the United States cannot demand that members of the armed forces also serve as guinea pigs for their experimental drug. You can look up all the reactions that have happened so far on the vaccine adverse event reporting system, VAERS. To date, there's been over 227,000 adverse events and 4,201 deaths following this injection. Despite this, the government agencies and national levels continue to promote this vaccine. It is my sincere hope that you will consider a future plan in light of these facts. I also don't agree with the solution of students and staff who are not vaccinated must wear a mask, as some schools in Ohio are doing, because that is discrimination. On a personal note, the reason I am so passionate about this is because I have a medical condition that increases my risk for blood clots. That is why I will not subject myself to the shot. I lost my first son to this medical condition when I had placental abruption during his birth. His younger brother has the same medical condition that I have because it is hereditary. I will not face the guilt of losing another child because I allowed society into bullying me into allowing him to get an experimental shot for a virus that he has over a 99% survival rate for. Thank you.
Eric Bulwer, are you with us? Thank you. If you would please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Bulwer. I'm a concerned parent. My address is 268 Olentangy Meadows Drive in Lewis Center. For the past several months, I've been joined by many other community members in sharing our concerns with the district, representatives, and administration. It has been an up and down experience as I've been reassured by the district that they are not using critical race theory, or as it should be called, state-sanctioned racism. They claim they are not using CRT in their development and training of teachers and staff, education of students, or in their curriculum. Every time I was somewhat encouraged in my dialogue, I would dig deeper, only to find out that the district was in fact propagating this Marxist ideology. Before I offer examples, allow me to be clear but brief as I explain what I'm talking about. Marxism categorizes people into groups. oppressor versus oppressed. In the past, Marxists have separated people based on characteristics such as class, gender, religion, etc. CRT specifically separates people into groups based on race. There is no individuality with this ideology, only groups. The oppressor group is viewed as evil. Therefore, the oppressors have no reason to be listened to, considered, or valued. If they do speak up, the oppressed must silence them and cancel them. The oppressed is the only voice allowed because they think they have the only real truth, which is what Marxists call lived experience. If something from the oppressed group doesn't make sense to you, that's because you just don't have the lived experience to understand it. If the oppressed says they feel like 1 + 1 = 3, just because it fits their narrative, you, the oppressor, cannot question it. They have lived experience that trumps all objective truth. If the oppressor says 1 + 1 = 2, and it goes against the oppressed narrative, get ready to be called a racist with absolutely no reality to back up their accusation. There is no objective truth with this ideology. I ask you, is that appropriate for an educational setting for children? To make things worse, the concept of intersectionality, which is coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a Marxist, is also being propagated by the district. Intersectionality takes two groups of oppressor and oppressed and adds intersections or levels to them. So I, to the Marxist, am labeled with intersections such as white, male, Christian, straight, able-bodied, conservative. I check most of the intersectionality boxes of a super oppressor. I am viewed as the oppressor of all oppressors. On the other hand, if you have a trans, disabled, immigrant, minority, etc., they are viewed as the oppressed of the oppressed. So it doesn't matter that I view the other person as made in the image of God and holding equal value as myself or anyone else. My ideology does not matter. How I treat that person doesn't matter to the Marxist. With those things in mind, I have had an ongoing conversation with a diversity, equity, and inclusion staff member. Before I proceed, I want everyone to understand that I appreciate her giving me her time. I don't want to call for someone to lose a job unless it's absolutely necessary, and I don't want to vilify, cancel, or socially crucify anyone. However, I also want to be very clear that she is wrong, morally and rationally wrong. Here's why. Let's first start with the title of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can't say you don't propagate CRT, then emphasize the word and concept of equity. Equity means equal outcome. Equality means equal opportunity. Education should be about equality, maximizing opportunity for every student, not making sure every student gets the same grade, experience, or outcome. Equity is communism. In communist countries, it is well documented that highly specialized and necessary professions such as medical care are in short supply. This should not be a surprise. If you could get paid the same amount to be a doctor as you would the custodian who cleans the doctor's office, why would you spend the extra time and effort to be a doctor? Apply equity to every aspect of a society, and you have a crumbling society. We need equal opportunity, not equity. The real title to our district theme is diversity, communism, and inclusion. Karl Marx was a communist economist, and the district is pushing a radically immoral worldview. I'm going to read something from the district's Spring 2021 DEI e-newsletter. It described their professional development day on February 12th by stating, quote, "The theme for this year is sense of belonging and anti-racism," end quote. Anti-racism sounds like it's supposed to mean against racism. Don't be fooled. Marxists intentionally manipulate and weaponize language, and the term anti-racism is Marxist racism. Ibram Kendi, just mentioned, considered by many to be the modern face of CRT, wrote a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. In Kendi's book, he writes, quote, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination," end quote. To be an anti-racist is to be a discriminatory racist. During my meeting with diversity, communism, and inclusion staff member, I was asked what my expectations were from them. I told her what most of us here seem to want, Martin Luther King's dream of being judged by the content of our character and not our skin color. We're doing the opposite of this. I was then told by this staff member that Martin Luther King was an anti-racist. I was also told the district uses intersectionality for training and development of teachers. I was shocked and disgusted. I still am. I would like to believe that most employees of the district are only ignorant, not disingenuous, or misleading. However, I cannot be sure of this, considering the totality of the circumstances leading me to believe otherwise. This should be embarrassing to the district that I even have to speak against Marxism. This must end. Let's work together to fix this. Thank you.
We have a few minutes remaining of our half hour. Our next participant is Salon Weiss. If
Hello.
you would please state your name and address for record.
My name is Salon Wise, and you have my information. It's on file. Appreciate you taking allowing me an opportunity to speak. I hope you allow me to finish out my 5 minutes. Good evening, board and community members. My family moved to Olentangy 5 years ago. Since then, we've seen much of what makes this a great school district. We've seen award-winning teachers, excellent programs and facilities, and a commitment to academic excellence. However, in that time, we've also seen instances making it clear there is still much work to be done when it comes to Olentangy creating a sense of belonging and equity regardless of race, ability, gender, identity, neurodiversity, or any other difference. This time last year, we were heartbroken as we read Dear OLSD, where students shared personal experiences with racism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, and other biases they endured here in Olentangy. We were also in the midst of worldwide protests calling for greater equity and equality after the murder of George Floyd. Many hoped that these events of the past summer would be a turning point. However, 1 year later, we see in many ways it wasn't a turning point, it was a tipping point. Instead of turning toward acknowledging the injustices of the past and the inequities of the present, we have tipped over into debating whether controversial subject matter has a place in the classroom. Instead of turning toward making progress on issues of race and bias that have plagued America since before its founding, we have tipped and tumbled down a path bickering over words like fragility, privilege, equity, and inclusion. Instead of turning toward ensuring no student has to endure the ignorance and bias detailed in Dear OLSD, we have tipped and toppled into attempts to prevent teachers from acknowledging and addressing matters of history and present-day events in a factual and age-appropriate way. We have over 22,000 students in this district, many of different races, identities, abilities, religions, and cultures. And given the growing and increasingly diverse population of our student body, it is imperative to maintain and grow the number of equity and inclusion administrators dedicated to promoting a culture of inclusive excellence for students, staff, and families. James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." In other words, facing issues of bias and inequity does not guarantee we will have success in solving them, but refusing to face these issues guarantees our failure, and as I see it, we cannot afford to fail. We cannot fail the kindergarten girl who has been bullied and made fun of because of the ethnic food in her lunchbox. We cannot fail the Asian American middle schooler who last year came home from school repeatedly crying after being called coronavirus by her schoolmates. We cannot fail the child with a disability who has not had access to accessible toys to play with on the playground. We're glad to see that that's changing. Or the student with neurodiversity who has been bullied because of how they communicate differently. We cannot fail the transgender high school student contemplating suicide because they feel so unaccepted. We cannot fail the teachers of color who enter the district but leave after a short time because they do not feel welcome. And I cannot fail my own children who are navigating childhood at a time when some community members cannot bring themselves to declare that my son's Black Lives Matter. Those are some reasons why my wife Ashley and I founded the Parent Diversity Network, also known as PDN, which is a network of Olentangy parents and community members engaged in elevating awareness, advocacy, accountability, and action regarding these issues. Since then, PDN has grown to include hundreds of Olentangy parents actively engaging to encourage progress in these areas. And for our community members watching at home or here, if there are any, if you would like to join our efforts in elevating awareness, advocacy, accountability, and action in Olentangy, I encourage you to visit parentdiversitynetwork.org for more information. And together, we won't fail our children. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our half hour of public participation. I appreciate that everybody took the time to listen to each other and be respectful of the time. Thank you very much. With that, we can return to the agenda. Okay, next we have our, sorry, I messed up, our treasurer action items.
Mrs. Hatfield, can you present the treasurer action items and let us know what they are, please?
Yes, please. I would like to present treasurer action items A through F for approval, please.
And I just want to point out that F is the transfer of funds from the general fund to the food service fund to make it whole, and in the amount of $1.5 million. That'll be a total of $3 million, which we will plan on repaying back the general fund over several years. Okay, do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rafe, what do you have for us tonight?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to present superintendent action items A through I for approval.
Okay, Superintendent action items A through I, do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And that includes the new people that are here tonight, that we are approving their promotions or their new positions. Okay, can you please call the roll on that?
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now I need a motion to go into executive session as permitted by Section 121.22G1 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment of public employees. When we come back, we'll just come back to adjourn. We will not be taking any further action. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And before we call the roll, remember our next meeting is July the 8th at Berlin. Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the board will be meeting in the Liberty Room. It is 10:30, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Kevin, and you
Second.
second. Okay, everybody vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.